The cake was still smoking from 18 candles when the words left her mouth like a small, sharp knife. If he vanished tomorrow, no one would care, she muttered to her friend, just loud enough for him to hear. The two girls giggled, clinking their soda glasses like they'd just shared some private joke. He stood across the room near the doorway, one hand still on the back of a chair he'd paid for, the other holding a paper plate of cake he no longer wanted. The room smelled of frosting and helium balloons. The walls were lined with banners he'd ordered online, banners that spelled out her name. He had written the checks, driven the miles, listened to every story she wanted to tell about school and friends and boy troubles. He had thought, naively, that today would be one of those rare moments of uncomplicated pride. Instead, the house he bought with his overtime shifts echoed with a truth he'd never imagined hearing from the girl he called his daughter. He didn't shout. He didn't even clear his throat. He watched her lean back on her chair, all teenage confidence, pretending the man who raised her was an afterthought at best. He set down the untouched cake on the buffet, wiped his fingers on a napkin, and stepped out onto the back porch. The cold air bit his skin. Through the window he saw Monica, her mother, his second wife, laughing at something on her phone, oblivious. Nobody noticed he'd left the room. Nobody cared. That, he thought, is the truest test. If you walk out and nobody turns their head, you were already gone. He stayed outside for a while, watching his breath mist. Inside, music thumped, the bass shaking the windows. He thought about every receipt, every soccer game, every weekend lost to chauffeuring, every unreturned thank you. The words replayed in his head, not angry now, just heavy. If he vanished tomorrow, no one would care. He didn't even realize he'd spoken it under his breath. He pulled his phone from his pocket and opened the draft of a message he'd saved weeks ago, a note from his attorney about certain filings. His thumb hovered. He closed it. Not yet. Timing was everything. When the last guest left and the kitchen smelled of stale soda and frosting, he went upstairs quietly. Monica had fallen asleep on the couch. Rachel, the girl who'd said the line, was in her room, probably scrolling through photos of the party he had funded. He opened the closet in the spare room, the one he used for storage. From the top shelf, he took down a black backpack he hadn't touched in years. It was heavier than he remembered. Inside, neatly folded, were a few shirts, a small toiletry kit, and a thin folder sealed with a red sticker. He set it on the bed, looked at it for a long moment, then zipped the bag closed. Downstairs, the refrigerator hummed. The clock on the stove blinked 12:03 a.m. He wrote a short note on a torn envelope, nothing dramatic, just a time and a phone number, then placed it beside the backpack on the kitchen counter. He took one last walk through the silent house, touching the banister he'd sanded himself, the window latch he'd fixed after a storm, the doorway where he'd marked her height in pencil for years. All those small, invisible labors. All gone, like breath on glass. He walked out the front door at 4:17 a.m. The street was empty, the cold deeper now. His car was already packed with a single duffel and an old thermos of coffee. He didn't look back at the house. Not once. As he drove away, the neighborhood blurred into dark shapes. Somewhere between the streetlights, he felt the first flicker of something he hadn't known in years. Not rage, not sadness. Something colder, sharper. Resolve. He knew exactly what needed to happen next. For those of you listening, this is the kind of story our team fights to tell. More than 90% of you hear these stories without subscribing, but subscribing really does push us to go deeper, to find the ones no one else dares to put into words. If you've been on the edge of your seat already, take a second to subscribe. It keeps this team alive. By dawn, he was gone. No goodbye, no fight. Just a black backpack on a kitchen counter and a house full of people who thought they knew him, still asleep. Somewhere across the city, in a quiet rented room, he unzipped the bag and laid out the folder with the red sticker. He read the first page once, then closed it and leaned back in the chair. The sun was rising. In the house he'd left, they would find the backpack soon enough. And when they did, they would realize he hadn't disappeared out of weakness. He'd vanished with precision. Monica was already annoyed before she saw the backpack. The garbage hadn't been taken out. The kitchen smelled faintly of leftover frosting, and Rachel was stomping around upstairs complaining that her phone charger was missing. Typical morning chaos, until her eyes locked on the black backpack sitting on the counter like a dead thing. Out of place. Wrong. She frowned. He never left things lying around. Ever. The man was meticulous to the point of irritating. She called out, "David?" Half-hearted. Not worried, yet. She walked to the bag and saw the note placed on top. an envelope torn in half with a time and a number scrawled in his rigid handwriting. Her stomach flipped, but not in the romantic, fluttering way she used to fake for Instagram photos. It flipped like something falling off a ledge. She unzipped the bag, slowly, like it might contain something live. There was a single manila envelope inside, sealed, but not taped. She opened it and saw a letter, typed, formal, dense with legal formatting. Top left corner, Miller, Vaughn and Keene, LLP. His attorney. Her eyes skimmed the first paragraph, and her hands started to shake. By the time she reached the second line, she was whispering, "No, no, no," like it would rewind reality. She dropped the letter. It hit the floor with a slap loud enough to make Rachel shout from upstairs. What was that? Monica didn't answer. She grabbed her phone, scrolled to his contact, and hit call. The line rang once, then again. Then voicemail. His voice was calm. "This is David. Leave it. Or don't. Beep." She didn't leave a message. Her hand was trembling too hard to even hold the phone upright. She knelt, picked up the letter, and kept reading. Her knees began to ache against the tile, but she didn't move. The second page, stapled at the top, began with a phrase that stopped her breath entirely. As of the date of this letter, I am formally withdrawing all financial and legal responsibility related to the minor known as Rachel L. Harmon, whose adoption was never finalized. It felt like the floor under her cracked. Because that line, that wasn't just lawyer fluff. He knew. He knew about the paperwork she never filed, about the notary she never visited, about the forged signature she'd panicked into copying when the state forms overwhelmed her 8 years ago. She'd always told herself she'd fix it later, that it was just a technicality, that if he loved Rachel like he said he did, it didn't matter what the state thought. But now it mattered. Oh, it mattered. Because if what this letter said was true, and Monica felt in her gut that it was, then legally, David wasn't Rachel's father. Not anymore. Maybe not ever. She stumbled back, nearly knocking over a kitchen stool, and reread the next line. You have knowingly misrepresented the legal status of our financial arrangements to multiple parties, including our joint financial advisor. A formal forensic audit has already been initiated, and you will receive requests for disclosure shortly. She gagged. That wasn't rage. That was precision. That was a man who hadn't just walked away out of heartbreak. He had prepared. This wasn't retreat. It was demolition, done in silence. Clinical. Cold. She realized now that his quietness the past few months wasn't sadness. It was calculation. She had mistaken absence of yelling for passivity. Rachel came down the stairs in pajamas, yawning. Where is he? She asked, pouring cereal. Monica stared at her daughter, unable to speak. What? Rachel asked. Did he seriously leave because of that joke last night? He's being so dramatic. Monica blinked. The cereal box in Rachel's hand might as well have been a live grenade. You don't get it, she whispered. Rachel rolled her eyes and popped a spoonful of cereal in her mouth. God, it's not like I said he should die or something. No, Monica said softly. But he just did. In every way that matters. She sat down heavily, letter still in her hand, and stared at the manila envelope as if it were hissing. The bag was still on the counter, the zipper now fully open, like a body bag, and inside it, the single most dangerous object wasn't the letter, it was proof. Proof that everything she thought was secure had been built on a story she told him years ago, one she never expected him to verify. Now he had, and now the story wasn't theirs anymore. It belonged to the court system, to the banks, to the IRS, and to every person he had copied on that letter, names that began flooding her memory like sirens in the distance. And David? David wasn't answering, because he didn't have to. She sat at the dining table in the same silk robe she wore every morning, the one David gifted her 3 Christmases ago, the one she always claimed was too nice to wear, but wore anyway because it made her feel like someone who had things under control. But right now, her hair was frizzed from sleep, her coffee was untouched, and her hands were trembling as she flipped through the second envelope she found tucked beneath the manila one. The first letter had been a punch to the gut. This was the dissection of the corpse. Pages of attorney-prepared documentation, each labeled, dated, and signed. Not by her. By him. 6 months ago. All filed through Miller, Vaughn, and Keene LLP. There was no hesitation in the tone of the language. No room for emotional appeal. Just brutal, surgical facts. After review of the petitioner's estate planning documents, it was discovered that the formal adoption of Rachel L. Harmon was never finalized. Although preliminary documentation had been initiated, the filing was abandoned prior to court registration. Furthermore, the petitioner's signature on Form 242A is inconsistent with notarized examples and appears to be forged. Forged. Her stomach turned. That was the word she always hoped would never show up. The moment she copied his signature on that document 8 years ago, she told herself she'd go back and clean it up. That it was harmless. He was going to adopt Rachel anyway. They had talked about it, hadn't they? But talking isn't signing. And now, the paper trail she thought she could keep vague had been chased down, audited, notarized, examined by people whose job it was to find liars in court filings. He knew. He'd known for half a year. And instead of confronting her, instead of storming around or begging for an explanation, he hired professionals. Quiet ones. The next paragraph read like a legal execution. As such, the petitioner has initiated full withdrawal of financial responsibility, effective immediately. No further medical, educational, or custodial authorization shall be honored in the name of Rachel L. Harmon under the petitioner's account, trust, or legal designation. Rachel wasn't just cut off. She was erased. Legally, at least. Monica had to grip the edge of the table to keep herself from falling sideways. Her eyes stung, but no tears came. Not yet. She flipped to the third page. It was a summary from Forensic Review Group, a name she recognized vaguely from their investment advisor's firm. One of those background auditing services they used when they bought the second property. But this was no background check. It was a timeline. 10 years of financial decisions. Transfers. Joint investments she'd asked David to sign off on. Usually casually, always with reassurances. It's safer this way, she'd told him. It's just a formality. You trust me, right? Apparently, he'd trusted her just enough to let her hang herself with her own paperwork. The file noted that 3 of the accounts were opened using her social security number. Fine. But the rest? Every joint account listed showed David as the primary, Monica as secondary, until 3 years ago, when she convinced him to simplify things and add her business account to their shared financial umbrella. The one that fed into their estate savings. The one she drained during COVID to keep the house afloat, without telling him. He knew. He knew everything. He knew about the backdoor transfer to her brother's startup. The one that went under and never came back. He knew about the emergency withdrawal for Rachel's medical expenses that actually covered her liposuction. He knew about the refinance maneuver she did behind his back. Probably thought it was clever when she forged the notary line and slipped it into the refinancing packet while he was dealing with his father's funeral. Page after page. Line after line. The audit hadn't just started. It was done. The letter ended with a final line that read like a tombstone. Per legal rights afforded to the undersigned, all fiduciary ties with Ms. Monica L. Harmon and dependent Rachel L. Harmon are hereby dissolved. All financial authorizations revoked. Further contact should be directed to legal counsel. She stared at the name typed beneath it. David Harmon. A man she thought was too soft to ever leave. Too sentimental to ever fight. Too slow to notice how she nudged, twisted, and manipulated the years into her favor. He noticed, and he didn't shout. He documented. Rachel came downstairs and dropped onto the couch, her voice casual. Did he text back? Monica couldn't answer. Is he coming back or what? Monica handed her the papers. You need to read this. Rachel glanced at the first page, then scoffed. What is this, some lawyer thing? Read the second paragraph. A beat passed. Then another. Rachel blinked. Her voice cracked. He's not my. No. Wait, you didn't? You never filed it. Monica whispered. I didn't think it mattered. Rachel's mouth dropped open. Didn't, Mom, he raised me. He paid for everything. I thought we had more time. You lied to him. The silence between them stretched out until the clock on the wall clicked loudly. Second after second. Monica looked out the window like she expected to see his car return, maybe pulling into the driveway for one last fight. But the driveway was empty. His car wasn't coming back. Because this wasn't a man leaving in rage. It was a man who'd done the math. And now the only people left with questions were the ones who never thought they'd need answers. Monica drove like the world was burning behind her, and Rachel was the last piece of furniture she could save from the flames. The girl sat slumped in the passenger seat, arms crossed, mascara smudged from the tears she claimed weren't hers. She kept glancing at her phone, checking for updates, for texts, for signs that this was all some strange test they could wake up from. He wouldn't just leave. He couldn't. Except he did. The early morning sun glared through the windshield, catching Monica's profile in sharp, unforgiving light. Her knuckles were white around the steering wheel. Her lips moved silently, as if she were rehearsing explanations she didn't believe. Rachel finally broke the silence. Why are we going to Uncle Greg's? Because he's the only one David talks to when he needs space. Then why not call? I have. He's not answering. Monica's voice cracked like a pane of glass under too much weight. He's probably with him. Just shut up and let me drive. Rachel flinched. She pulled her hoodie up like a shield and stared out the window. The world was moving too fast and not fast enough. Her mind kept looping. He's not my legal father. She never filed the papers. All that time. It made no sense. He was there for every scraped knee, every dentist appointment, every AP test meltdown. He was the one who stayed up with her during food poisoning. He made her those weird congratulations pancakes with confetti sprinkles when she got into college. And now? Now she wasn't his. They pulled up to Greg's house. A small brick rancher with a sloping porch and a yard full of garden gnomes that David once called a cry for help. Monica was already out of the car before the engine stopped. She pounded on the front door, hard and fast, like urgency could resurrect trust. No answer. She banged again, angrier now. Greg, I know you're in there. Still nothing. Rachel got out reluctantly, wrapping her arms around herself against the morning chill. She watched as her mother paced in front of the door like a cop in a bad TV show. When Monica finally stepped back, she noticed the curtain in the side window twitch. Just for a second. He is in there, she hissed. Then maybe he doesn't want to talk to you either, Rachel mumbled, instantly regretting it when her mother's eyes snapped toward her like bullets. Get in the car. No. Rachel. No. Her voice cracked, but it carried. You dragged me here. You lied to both of us. And now you want me to just get in the car like nothing happened? No. For a moment, Monica looked like she might slap her. But she didn't. She just turned and walked toward the car alone, shaking with something deeper than rage. Something more dangerous. Powerlessness. They drove in silence again, the air between them growing heavier by the minute. When Monica tried calling David's office, the line rang 3 times, then dropped. She called again. Same result. On the 3rd try, she got a robotic voice. This number is no longer in service. Rachel whispered. He shut it down. Monica didn't reply. She couldn't. The man who once couldn't figure out how to attach a PDF to an email had quietly dismantled his entire digital footprint overnight. Office number? Gone. Personal cell? Voicemail. LinkedIn? Deleted. Even their shared Dropbox folder for household receipts now showed an error message. He was gone, and not just physically. He had erased himself from their lives with the precision of someone who had planned this for months. Maybe years. Their last stop was the attorney's office. Not his attorney, their attorney. The one they'd both seen together when setting up the trust funds and the estate planning and the endless conversations about wills and contingencies. The same lawyer who used to chuckle when Monica joked about David being too honest to survive in modern marriage. She marched through the front door of the office with Rachel trailing behind like a ghost. The receptionist looked up, blinked once, and then quietly disappeared into the back. Monica clutched her purse like it might explode. Tell him we're not leaving until he speaks to us. But it wasn't the receptionist who returned. It was Sam, their attorney, gray-haired and stone-faced as ever. He didn't wave, didn't offer pleasantries. He just said, "You're not going to like this." Monica narrowed her eyes. Where is he? Sam didn't answer. Instead, he slid a sealed envelope across the desk. I was instructed to give you this when you came. Rachel grabbed it first. What is this? Sam shook his head. Instructions. That's all I'm authorized to say. Monica tore it open, but Rachel was already reading over her shoulder. Inside were 2 lines typed on crisp paper, no letterhead. You won't find me. You'll receive what you need, soon. In the meantime, remember, the silence is the answer. Rachel looked at Sam, then her mother. What does that mean? Monica just sat there, defeated, silent, because it meant that David hadn't simply vanished. He'd engineered his absence, and no amount of shouting, searching, or guilt would bring him back until he decided it was time. And judging by the stillness in Sam's expression, David wasn't planning on coming back at all. The silence in the house was starting to throb. The kind of silence that feels loaded, like the walls are listening. Monica sat at the dining table, half-empty wine glass in hand, though it was barely past noon. The envelope from the lawyer lay flat and unbothered next to her phone, like a warning label she'd decided to ignore. She hadn't eaten, hadn't showered, just sat there, spinning through what-ifs and revisions of the past that might have saved her. Rachel sat on the couch nearby, scrolling through her phone with a robotic thumb, stopping occasionally on old pictures of her and David. In some, she was little, missing teeth, grinning up at him as he pushed her on a tire swing or knelt beside a science fair project he'd helped her build. In the most recent ones, she looked annoyed, arms crossed while he grinned anyway, the kind of dad who never figured out how to pose for selfies. She didn't notice her mother's phone buzz at first. Monica did. She stared at the screen like it had grown fangs. The name flashing was Alan McCree. Her heart dropped so fast she felt physically ill. Alan wasn't just one of her investment buddies. He was the architect of half her side projects. The man who helped her set up the LLCs David didn't know about. The one who convinced her to consolidate excess liquidity into vehicles he said would triple in value. He was sharp, smug, and greedy, and now he was calling her at 12:41 p.m. on a Tuesday. She answered, trying to sound breezy. Alan. Monica. His voice was tight, clipped. Not angry, afraid. What's going on? I just got a letter from your husband's attorney. Her fingers went numb. What? What kind of letter? He's filed a request for valuation of every asset your name is attached to. Joint holdings, trusts, accounts. Even the annuity fund you told me was in your cousin's name. She blinked. That doesn't make sense. He can't. He can't, and he did. And it's not a request. It's a freeze order. She swallowed, heart pounding. You're saying? I'm saying our accounts are flagged, Monica. Red flagged. A forensic audit firm out of Boston just contacted my compliance guy. You didn't tell me your husband retained revocation rights. I didn't know he had them. Well, he did. And now every transaction tied to your name is under review. As if on cue, her phone lit up again. This time, a text from another partner. Just one sentence. You didn't tell us he had revocation rights. Monica dropped the phone. Rachel looked up. What was that? Monica didn't answer. Her breath was shallow. Her ears rang. The world felt like it had tilted 30 degrees sideways. She stood slowly, walked to the sink, and stared out the window like something outside might fix this. Nothing did. Rachel repeated louder, Mom, what did you do? Monica turned around, face pale and tight. It was just an investment umbrella. Rachel frowned. English, please. I merged some of our accounts into a broader fund. David signed off years ago. I didn't think. You didn't think? Rachel's voice climbed. You used Dad's money. He's not your legal father anymore, remember? Monica snapped, instantly regretting it as Rachel flinched like she'd been slapped. For a moment, they both just stood there, breathing hard, staring at each other across a gulf that had grown by the hour. Rachel's voice dropped. You leveraged his accounts into your investments? It was supposed to benefit all of us, Monica whispered. The returns were going to be. We're going to be what? Rachel said, shaking. Enough to keep lying? Enough to keep forging signatures? Another ping. Another message. Another investor. Another question she couldn't answer. Her phone screen now looked like a courtroom. Names she once courted and impressed were turning cold, clinical, demanding documentation she couldn't provide. Because she never thought she'd have to. David was supposed to be the gullible one. The loyal fallback. The man who didn't read the fine print. Apparently, he read everything. Rachel watched her mother unravel like a threadbare sheet being yanked off a bed too fast. The woman who once controlled every dinner, every dollar, every decision, was now hunched at the table, wine glass clinking against the wood, phone buzzing non-stop with consequences. Rachel finally said what neither of them wanted to say out loud. He set this up? All of this? Monica didn't respond. Because the walls weren't closing in. They'd already closed. David had made sure of it. He didn't need to shout. He didn't even need to be there. All he needed was a folder, a law firm, and time. And now, the house Monica once ruled from was turning on her. Email by email, call by call, signature by revoked signature. Rachel wasn't silent anymore. By the time Monica poured herself her third glass of wine, this one in a coffee mug to make it feel less shameful, Rachel was in the doorway with her arms crossed and eyes full of something Monica hadn't seen since she was 12. Fury. Not the bratty teenage kind, but real fury. The kind born from betrayal. Tell me, Rachel said. Monica didn't turn. She didn't need to. She could feel the heat of her daughter's stare like a halogen lamp on her back. Tell you what, she replied coolly, like they were negotiating bedtime. Don't do that, Rachel snapped. Don't give me that voice. I'm not 5. I want to know exactly what you did. What you signed. What you didn't sign. What you lied about. Monica exhaled through her nose. He's just lashing out. Don't deflect. He's being dramatic. Mom. Rachel's voice dropped an octave. Is any of it in my name? The trust fund? The tuition accounts? My college registration? Is anything safe? Silence. Monica turned slowly. hoping her face still held some fragment of maternal authority. Rachel, listen. He would never actually take anything from you. He's hurt. That's all this is. Rachel stepped forward. You didn't answer the question. I just did. No, Rachel growled. You dodged it. Just like you dodged filing the adoption. Just like you dodged every question he ever asked you about those joint accounts. I did what I had to do for this family, Monica snapped. I kept us alive when he was out there playing martyr in flannel and pretending that love and trust fund balances were the same thing. You used him. I trusted him. No, you bet on him never leaving, Rachel said. And you lost. Before Monica could reply, the doorbell rang. They both froze. No one had come by the house since yesterday. The silence had been uninterrupted, eerie, as if the world had already sentenced them and moved on. Monica moved toward the door, then stopped. A white sedan idled in the driveway, no logos. A man in a gray jacket stepped out, holding a courier envelope. He didn't speak, just handed it to Monica, had her sign a tablet, and walked away without eye contact. She stared at the envelope like it might be a bomb. Rachel was already beside her, ripping it open. Inside were 5 sheets of paper. The first was a summary sheet titled, Financial Guardianship Status, Termination Notice. Rachel read aloud, her voice trembling. Effective immediately, all financial commitments previously allocated under custodial designation to Rachel L. Harmon are hereby revoked. The next few lines moved fast. Tuition prepayment plan, canceled. University financial assistance request, withdrawn. Health insurance coverage, nullified as of 12:01 a.m. Power of attorney, expired. Rachel's hands began to shake. The second page was worse. A notarized declaration, legal seals glowing red from the scan. Subject, Rachel L. Harmon. Status, former dependent. Legal custodianship, terminated. Filed by David Harmon. Date of signature, 2 weeks ago. She stopped reading. Or maybe her brain stopped letting her. It all blended together now, lawyerese and numbers, and the kind of bureaucratic language that doesn't just end a relationship, it erases it. Rachel turned slowly toward her mother. You knew this was coming. No, Monica said quickly, too quickly. I knew something was happening, but not this. You let me walk around this house, Rachel hissed. Like I was safe. Like I had a future. Like my name meant something. Rachel, we can fix this. With what money, Mom? She spat. With the fake LLCs? With the accounts he froze? With your wine budget? Monica's face cracked. For a moment, she looked ready to sob. But then she didn't. She held the tears like a badge, refused to fall apart, even as the house crumbled around them. I'll talk to him, Monica whispered. He'll listen to me. He just needs. He already listened. For 18 years. He's done listening. Rachel took the documents and walked to the kitchen. She laid them out on the counter, one by one, like they were evidence at a trial she never agreed to attend. Then she opened her laptop. She logged into her university account. Access denied. She opened her health insurance portal. Account no longer active. She opened the trust portal. Error message. 3 tabs. 3 walls falling at once. She closed the laptop and looked at the photo on the fridge. Her and David. Her 8th grade graduation. His arms around her like she was the center of gravity. She took it down and stared at it. Then, voice flat, he didn't just leave. No, Monica said, hollow. He removed the foundation and let the house collapse. Rachel whispered, and I was standing on the top floor. Neither of them spoke after that. Because what was there to say? Everything that felt secure was never real. And now, the only thing left was the sound of something breaking. Quietly. Permanently. From the inside out. Monica's thumbs hovered above her phone like they might catch fire if she pressed send. Her contact list was open. Dozens of names, familiar and once dependable. Most were people who'd laughed at her table, eaten meals David cooked, smiled at her daughter's school plays. And now, one by one, they were becoming ghosts. First, she tried Alan again. Straight to voicemail. Then Greg. The brother who always answered, even when David didn't want him to. Nothing. Then Cheryl. The woman from church who once called David the most patient man she'd ever met. Her phone rang once, then silence. She opened Facebook Messenger in desperation, firing off 4 messages to acquaintances from David's office softball team. No one replied. It was as if the minute he disappeared, he'd carried his entire social universe with him and left her floating alone. Rachel sat nearby on the floor, cross-legged, flipping through old photo albums. No makeup, no phone, just a slow, unsteady rhythm of page turning, like she was reading the autopsy report on her childhood. Monica refreshed her inbox. Nothing. Then a text came through, not from someone she expected. It was from Julie, a woman from their old couple's dinner group. They hadn't spoken in years, not since that weird night when Monica drunkenly accused Julie of hitting on David with her cucumber salad. But Julie had been around long enough to know David's habits. Her message was brief. He's safe. He's staying with someone. Monica's fingers moved so fast they fumbled over the screen. Who? Where? Tell him Rachel is falling apart. I need to speak to him. Please. Julie replied 1 minute later. He said to tell you. The silence is the answer. Monica stared at the screen until the words blurred. Her hand lowered slowly into her lap like it no longer belonged to her. Rachel hadn't said anything yet. Not for over 30 minutes. Monica turned to look at her daughter, expecting anger, or worse, more questions. But Rachel just sat there, the old family album spread across her knees. The page was open to a beach trip from years ago. David was holding her in the air, spinning her like she was made of air and laughter. Her little arms were flung out, her mouth wide in a scream laugh. David's eyes were squinting from the sun, but the smile? That smile was full. Rachel reached toward the plastic sleeve in the album. There, stuck just beneath the edge of the photo, was a yellow sticky note. The handwriting was unmistakable, blocky, neat, deliberate. She peeled it off and read it aloud in a whisper. She called me her real dad that day. I knew it wouldn't last, but I still hoped. Her voice caught. Her hands shook. She blinked too many times for someone not crying. Monica froze. What did you say? Rachel didn't answer. She reread the note, holding it delicately, like it might disintegrate in her fingers. Her lips trembled, not just from the words themselves, but from the memory of that day. She did call him that. They'd been on the pier. She'd just won a rigged stuffed animal from one of those impossible claw machines, and he carried her on his shoulders. She remembered yelling to the sky, "You're my real dad." He'd said nothing, just laughed. But he'd remembered. And now she understood, he'd hoped. Despite everything. Despite Monica. Despite being sidelined, humiliated, and ignored. He'd held on because Rachel gave him something to hold on to. Until she didn't. Rachel whispered, he wasn't cold. Monica glanced over. What? Rachel's eyes were glassy now, jaw clenched. He wasn't cold. He was consistent. He never yelled. He never lied. He just waited. And we didn't notice when he stopped. Monica wanted to argue. Wanted to say David had always been passive, that this was just another one of his dramatic disappearances. But she couldn't, because she knew what Rachel meant. This wasn't abandonment. This was the final boundary of a man who spent years swallowing disrespect, rewriting betrayal into excuses, and quietly logging every instance of being second-guessed, overruled, dismissed. And when he left, he didn't slam a door. He turned off the lights, locked the accounts, and left behind the truth. Rachel held the sticky note close like a relic. She turned to her mother. He hoped. I killed that. Monica opened her mouth, but the words didn't come. What could she say? That Rachel was just a child? That it wasn't her fault? She couldn't even believe it herself. The album stayed open on the floor. One frozen memory after another. All the moments Rachel once thought were automatic, college, healthcare, the safety net she never imagined needing, were now conditional. Gone. And somewhere out there, the man who gave her all of it was sitting in silence. Not angry, just done. The receptionist didn't even look up when Rachel entered the glass-paneled office. The sound of the door chiming felt out of place, cheerful, almost like it hadn't been silencing people all week. Rachel stood just inside the threshold, her hoodie still damp from the drizzle outside, sneakers squeaking faintly against the polished floor. Her fingers tightened around the frayed strap of her tote bag. There was no plan, no speech, just a mounting pressure in her chest that had nowhere left to go. The receptionist finally looked up, middle-aged, hair pulled back in a bun so tight it looked like it hurt. The nameplate read Kathy, and Rachel recognized her from the estate meetings. She was the kind of woman who once offered Rachel hard candy from a crystal bowl and called her sweetheart. Not today. Hi. Rachel croaked, trying to clear her throat. I need to see Mr. Harmon. I mean, David Harmon. Please. Just a few minutes. Kathy didn't blink. I'm sorry. Mr. Harmon's not seeing visitors. It's important. Kathy stood. She didn't argue. Didn't ask for an explanation. Just walked calmly into a back room. Rachel stood frozen in the lobby, her heartbeat so loud it sounded like traffic. She expected a long wait, maybe a cold denial. But Kathy returned within 2 minutes. She was holding a plain white envelope. No markings, no stamp. Just Rachel's name typed on the front in bold serif font. Her name looked strange in print like that, like a name on a case file. Or a tombstone. Kathy handed it to her gently. He left instructions, she said. If you came in, I was to give you this. Nothing more. Do you know where he is? Rachel asked. Kathy hesitated, then softened. He said, she's smart. She'll know enough not to try and follow. Rachel took the envelope. Her hands were trembling again. Did he seem okay? Kathy smiled. Not warmly. Not cruelly. Just quietly. He seemed at peace. Rachel nodded, lips tight, and stepped out without another word. The rain was light, more mist than storm, but she ducked into the stairwell outside the office. The metal steps were cold and slick beneath her. She sat halfway down, back against the concrete wall, and stared at the envelope. She didn't open it right away. She studied her name like it might answer a question she hadn't formed yet. Then, with a deep breath that came out shaky, she tore the flap. The letter inside was one page. No handwriting. Just clean, professional type. The kind you'd expect from a report, not a goodbye. It read, Rachel, you were never the mistake. I was. For believing love was enough. For thinking showing up every day would matter more than paperwork, than titles, than legality. For convincing myself that patience was the same thing as progress. You were a child. I was the adult. I stayed. I gave what I had. I believed that would be enough. I was wrong. You owe me nothing. But know this. I never stopped hoping you'd see me. Even when you didn't. Even when you said what you did. Love without recognition is erosion. Eventually, it wears through. This is the bottom of it. D. Rachel stared at the letter for a long time. The words didn't hit like lightning. They landed like bricks, one after the other, burying her. Her breath came out in tiny gasps now. She clutched the page against her chest like it might disappear, like she could shove it into her ribcage and patch the hollow place. She whispered, I didn't mean it. The stairwell didn't care. I didn't mean any of it. She folded forward, arms wrapped around her knees, the letter crushed against her chest. It was the kind of crying that didn't look like crying, no dramatic sobs, no wailing. Just quiet shaking. A girl trying to compress herself into something smaller than regret. She didn't remember how long she sat there. Long enough for her legs to go numb. Long enough for the letter to become damp with mist and her own tears. He hadn't condemned her. He hadn't disowned her in anger. He had done something worse. He had forgiven her. And left anyway. Rachel sat back slowly and stared upward toward the gray sky bleeding through the iron staircase. There was no villain here. Not really. Just a man who gave more than he had. And a girl who learned too late what that meant. The call was made from the back porch, Monica's favorite spot in the house. Or it used to be. The string lights above her buzzed faintly, half the bulbs burned out. The cushions were damp from rain no one thought to brush off. Everything felt slightly off, like the stage for a play that had already ended. The wine glass in her hand was full, uncharacteristically untouched. The phone sat on the small table beside her, David's name glowing softly on the screen. She stared at it for 20 minutes, building the courage she used to summon in seconds. It wasn't about getting him back. She knew that door was closed. Deadbolt. Torched. But she needed something. A voice. An anchor. Even a goodbye. She hit call. And against every expectation, every pattern of silence and voicemail dead ends, he answered. Hello. She froze. The calm in his voice was worse than anger. Anger meant he cared. This was different. David, she said quietly, thank you for picking up. A pause. Just long enough to make her stomach clench. What do you want, Monica? She swallowed, trying not to sound small. I'm not calling to fight. I wanted you to know she didn't mean it. Rachel, that night. It was just a stupid comment. She was showing off. She didn't. She said it when she felt safest, David said, cutting her off. Still calm. That's when the truth comes out. Monica closed her eyes. She's not herself. She was exactly herself. That's the part that hurt. His voice didn't rise. Didn't crack. It moved like water over stone, clean, unwavering, cold. She's 17, Monica offered. She says things without thinking. She said it after 18 candles were blown out. Monica. The line went quiet for a second. Not dropped. Just waiting. Monica tried again, softer now. So what do we do? You rebuild, David said. With what? Your name. Your money. Your signature. The words landed like bricks. There was no sarcasm in them. No venom. Just reality. He continued. You spent years asking for independence. Remember? You wanted your own thing. You said it often. You wouldn't understand, David. You've never had to be the one who builds. Well, now you are. Her throat tightened. That's not fair. It's accurate. She shifted in her seat, looking out at the backyard, overgrown, weeds rising like accusations from the soil. David used to trim it every weekend. Quietly, always with gloves and a portable speaker, humming along to classic rock she hated. He never made a show of it. Just like he never made a show of leaving. You were supposed to be the solid one, she whispered. I was, he said. She didn't expect that. She expected denial. Defense. But he gave her none. I stayed longer than I should have, he continued. I hoped harder than I was allowed to. And when I finally stopped hoping, I left with dignity. You'll never have to worry about scandal. Or rumors. Or lawsuits. Then why does it feel like punishment? Because it is, he said flatly. But not from me. From the truth. She squeezed her eyes shut. You still love her. I know you do. I do, he said. That's why I left. That hit harder than she was ready for. Monica leaned forward, elbows on knees, head in hands. She's been crying. She's barely eating. She'll survive. Pain makes people real. Another pause. Not cruel. Not indifferent. Just unshakable. Monica forced one final question from the back of her throat. Will you ever come back? David didn't answer right away. She thought the call had dropped. Then, no. Because if I do, I'd be returning to something that already died. And I'm not a necromancer. She almost laughed. Almost. But her breath caught in her chest. His voice softened, just barely. Goodbye, Monica. Then, click. The line went dead. Not dropped. Not lost. Closed. She stared at the phone in her hand, blinking like she might will it to ring again. But it didn't. Wouldn't. Because that's the thing about men like David. The quiet ones. The reliable ones. When they finally leave, they don't slam the door. They remove themselves from the equation so thoroughly, you start questioning if they were ever really there at all. But they were. And now? Now you have to live with the absence. And the knowledge that it's permanent. The envelope came on a Tuesday. Plain white. No return address. Not thick enough to be threatening. Not slim enough to be ignored. Rachel found it wedged awkwardly in the mailbox between a community college pamphlet she hadn't requested and a past-due electricity notice. She didn't even bring it inside at first. She stood at the door, flipping it over in her hands like it might contain a trap. Her name was printed on the front. Just that. No Mississippi, no flair. No indication of warmth. She opened it on the porch. Inside, a single letter on thick legal stock, bearing the seal of Miller, Vaughn, and Keene LLP. Her stomach turned. She didn't want to read it. But she owed it to herself to finish this, whatever this was now. It wasn't what she expected. It wasn't another severance. It was a declaration. A trust had been created. The silent father's trust. She blinked. Read it again. Then again. Her pulse slowed as the text registered line by line. The Silent Father's Trust is a nonprofit legal initiative created to support men in financial and custodial limbo due to unfiled adoptions, forged authorizations, and family-based financial coercion. The trust will offer legal counsel, audit support, and emotional aid for men who have silently carried the weight of fatherhood without legal recognition. Rachel's hands trembled. The next paragraph outlined a funding pool. Initial deposit, 7 figures. Entirely funded by the dissolution of 2 prior estate accounts. The ones she always assumed would one day have her name on them. They didn't. Not anymore. There was a note attached at the bottom of the legal documentation. Not typed on a separate page, but written into the cover letter, like a whisper tucked into the folds of a will. Your father didn't disappear. He just stopped fighting for someone who threw away his name. Rachel sank to the porch step. Her legs folded beneath her like they'd forgotten how to hold her. She reread the sentence over and over until the ink blurred. He didn't vanish. He reallocated. He redefined what legacy means. And he did it without her. Inside the house, Monica's voice filtered faintly through the cracked window. She was pacing again, talking to someone about a property tax delay, using the same clipped tone she used to reserve for customer service agents and David when she thought he was being too sensitive. Rachel could still remember the way her mother used to talk over him during dinner. The way she would hand him forms to sign while half watching TV. The way he always looked a little tired. A little unseen. She now knew that exhaustion wasn't passive. It was cumulative. Across the city, in a modest downtown office far from the neighborhood where he used to live, David Harmon sat quietly across from a notary public. No ceremony. No drama. Just the final step. He slid the last paper across the desk, signed it with a steady hand, and pressed the pen down long enough for the ink to settle into permanence. The notary stamped it. Done. The Silent Father's Trust was now active. The trust's director, an old colleague of his from the estate firm, offered a handshake. You sure you don't want to name it something else? Something more personal? David shook his head. No. Silence is the point. As he walked out into the sunlight, no one noticed him. No one asked questions. He passed a father and son walking into a pizza shop. He smiled faintly, not bitter, just tired. Not broken. Shifted. Back at the house, Rachel was still on the porch, fingers tracing the final sentence on the letter as if touch could reverse it. She wanted to scream, wanted to call, wanted to undo. But she didn't. Because now she understood, this wasn't punishment. This was reallocation of belief. David hadn't abandoned her. He'd simply decided to plant his love where it might actually grow, where it might matter, where it could outlive him. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. He built a trust in silence, and left behind the echo of everything she could have been if she'd only said, "You matter."